Story 1. The Boy in the Stairwell. Sarah was 10 years old, living in a decaying apartment complex on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio, where the Rust Belt winters seemed to seep into the walls. The building was a relic, its paint peeling like dead skin, its hallways smelling of damp concrete and forgotten lives. Sarah's best friend Lily lived across the hall, and they'd spend evenings trading Pokemon cards or whispering ghost stories under a flashlight's glow. One night, around 11:45 p.m., Sarah's older brother called her home, his voice sharp over the phone. To get back, she had to cross a flickering fluorescent-lit landing and climb a narrow stairwell that faced Lily's apartment. The stairwell was a no-man's land, stuffed with broken chairs, mildewed boxes, and shadows that seemed to pulse. It led to a boarded-up apartment on the top floor, locked since the 1970s, rumored to have been abandoned after a tenant vanished. As Sarah stepped off Lily's threshold, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, her gaze drifted to the stairwell's mouth. The single bulb buzzed weakly, casting a sickly yellow glow that died halfway down the steps. Something stirred in the dark, a boy, maybe 9, staring up from the shadows. He wore faded denim overalls like something from a 1950s catalog, and a bowl haircut that framed his too pale face. His eyes were voids, unblinking, as if they held secrets no child should know. Sarah's breath hitched, her heart stuttering. She told herself it was just her imagination, the late hour playing tricks. To prove it, she stepped up and down on the landing's edge, her eyes locked on the figure. A boy mirrored her, his head tilting in perfect sync, his movements jerky, like a puppet on frayed strings. The air thickened, the shadows coiling tighter, and a faint tick-tick-tick echoed from nowhere, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat counting down. Sarah's skin prickled, the stairwell feeling less like a place and more like a trap, its darkness hungry. She bolted, her footsteps pounding as she hammered on her apartment door, screaming for her brother. When he yanked it open, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing about the boy. He checked the stairwell, flashlight in hand, but found nothing. No boy, no footprints, just the clutter and that oppressive dark. Years later, at 17, Sarah told her father, expecting a lecture about childish fears. Instead, he went still, his coffee mug trembling in his hand. "He had overalls, didn't he?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah's blood froze. "How do you know?" Her father confessed he'd seen the same boy in that stairwell when he was young, always at night, always watching from the same spot. Once, he'd found a pocket watch on the landing, its ticking louder than it should have been, and hid it in the abandoned apartment, terrified it was cursed. Sarah never saw the watch, but she avoids that stairwell now, swearing the shadows move when she passes, and sometimes, late at night, she hears that ticking, calling her back. Story 2. The Door That Bled Fear. A decade ago, Michael and his girlfriend Jessica shared a cramped apartment in a rundown part of St. Louis, Missouri, where the Mississippi River's humidity clung to everything. Their building was a maze of creaking floors and flickering lights, the kind of place where neighbors kept to themselves and the walls seemed to listen. One sweltering July night, they closed their bedroom door, unusual for them, but the air felt heavy, oppressive, like it demanded privacy. Jessica drifted off quickly, her breathing soft, but Michael lay awake, his mind churning with worries about work and bills. Around 1:15 a.m., a sharp thud rattled the door, followed by a slow, wet scratching, like claws carving through damp wood. Michael's pulse spiked, his eyes locking on the door, faintly lit by the sodium glow of streetlights seeping through the blinds. The sound came again, deliberate, almost rhythmic, as if something were testing the wood's strength. Jessica woke, her voice trembling. "Michael, what's that?" Before he could answer, the scratching intensified, joined by a low, guttural hum that wasn't quite a voice. Michael swore he heard a faint tick, 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 pulsing from under the bed, syncing with the scratches like a conductor's baton. The room shrank, the air growing thick, the shadows twisting into shapes that didn't belong. Elongated fingers, eyeless faces, gone when he blinked. Jessica clung to him, her nails digging into his arm, whispering, "Don't let it in." But the noise wouldn't stop, each scratch deeper, wetter, like the door was bleeding. She begged him to check, her fear infectious. Michael grabbed a steel pipe he kept under the bed for protection, his legs unsteady as he crept toward the door. The ticking grew louder, now coming from the dresser, where he'd never noticed the watch before. As his hand grazed the doorknob, a final thud shook the frame, the scratching halting with a sickening squelch. He flung the door open, pipe raised, heart hammering. The hallway was empty. No scratches marred the door, no footprints dirtied the floor. Yet the air felt alive, heavy with a presence that pressed against his skin. They grabbed their keys and fled to Jessica's sister's house across town, the ticking echoing in their ears. Days later, Michael found a pocket watch in the dresser, its hands stuck but its ticking relentless. He smashed it with a hammer, but the sound lingered, and sometimes in the quiet of night, he hears those scratches, closer than they should be. Story 3. The Scream in the Appalachian Dark. Last summer, Emily and I were road tripping through the U.S., chasing freedom and stories for this channel. We ended up in rural West Virginia, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, where the hills feel alive and the nights swallow light whole. On our fourth day, we stopped in a small town called Black Hollow, a place frozen in time, its main street lined with sagging porches and wary eyes. After dinner at a greasy diner, we drove our rental car to a secluded overlook, a dirt road winding through dense pines that seemed to whisper as we passed. The stars were sharp, the air cool, and we got caught up in the moment, ignoring the isolation, the way the trees leaned too close. Then it came, a scream, raw and jagged, tearing through the night. It wasn't human, not entirely. A sound that clawed at your soul, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Emily froze, her breath shallow, as we scanned the darkness through the car's windows. The pines loomed like sentinels, their branches swaying without wind. The scream morphed into a long, drawn-out no, stretching for seconds that felt eternal, layered with voices that didn't align, some high, some impossibly deep. My first thought was a hiker in trouble, but the sound was too close, too wrong, vibrating in the car's metal frame. I reached for the door, instinct urging me to help, but Emily grabbed my wrist, her eyes wide with terror. "It's not real," she whispered, tears streaming. "It's not alive." The air turned frigid, the dashboard lights dimming, and I heard it, a tick, 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 sharp and insistent, from my backpack, where the pocket watch lay. The scream came again, closer, as if it were inside the car, inside us. The windows fogged, not from breath but from something else, and in the mist I swore I saw shapes, hands pressing, faces with no eyes. We floored it, tires spitting gravel, the screams fading but the ticking growing louder, a relentless pulse. Emily didn't sleep that night, curled against me in her motel room, jumping at every creak. The next day, we learned Black Hollow had a dark history. In the 1980s, a string of unsolved murders plagued the area. Couples found dead in their cars, their bodies untouched, but their faces frozen in terror. One attack happened near that overlook, or close enough to make our stomachs churn. I scoured local news for recent incidents, hoping for a rational explanation, but found nothing. The watch still ticks, even now, and late at night I hear that scream, slithering through the dark, calling me back to those woods.